Welcome back to The Sleep Detective, where we dive deep into the darkest corners of criminal psychology. I'm your host, and tonight we're exploring one of the most chilling aspects of serial killer psychology, the weaponization of charm. This isn't just about being charismatic or likable. This is about the calculated, methodical use of human connection as a hunting tool. We're going to examine how this psychological weapon has evolved across decades, from Ted Bundy's college campus charm in the 1970s to modern digital predators. What makes this analysis particularly disturbing is how consistent these patterns remain, regardless of the era or technology available. Before we begin, I want you to think about someone in your life who you consider genuinely charming. Now imagine that same charm being used not to connect, but to hunt. Comment below and tell me, what do you think is the most dangerous aspect of predatory charm? Is it the initial attraction, the gradual manipulation, or something else entirely? And if you're fascinated by the psychology behind criminal behavior like this, subscribe now for our weekly deep dives into the minds of history's most complex killers. The concept of charm as a weapon isn't new to criminal psychology, but what's fascinating is how it's been refined and perfected across generations of predators. Ted Bundy didn't invent predatory charm. He simply perfected it for his era. When we study criminal psychology across decades, we see evolution, not just in methods, but in the psychological sophistication of how charm is deployed. Each generation of predators learns from the last, consciously or unconsciously. The 1970s gave us Bundy's campus charm. The 1980s brought us different approaches. The 1990s saw technological integration. And today's predators use social media psychology that would have been impossible to imagine 50 years ago. But the core psychological principles remain identical. The ability to read micro-expressions, the capacity to mirror what victims want to see, the skill of making someone feel uniquely special and understood. What makes predatory charm so effective is that it exploits our deepest human need, the desire to be truly seen and appreciated. These killers become psychological chameleons, reflecting back exactly what their victims most want to experience. The charm isn't genuine. It's a carefully crafted psychological mask designed to bypass normal human defense mechanisms. When someone seems to understand you perfectly, your brain releases oxytocin. This creates a biochemical bond that predators exploit. Bundy understood this instinctively. He would approach victims not with generic charm, but with specifically tailored psychological profiles. He studied each potential victim's personality type and mirrored their ideal companion. This isn't just casual observation. This is psychological predation at its most sophisticated level. Bundy could assess personality types within minutes of interaction. He understood introversion versus extroversion. He recognized insecurity patterns. He identified emotional needs. The scary part is how this knowledge gets passed down, not through formal training, but through cultural osmosis. Each generation of predators studies the successes of previous killers, often without realizing they're doing it. Modern predators read about Bundy's techniques in books, documentaries, and podcasts. They absorb the psychological strategies. They adapt them for contemporary contexts. The learning never stops. This is why copycat psychology is so dangerous. It's not just about copying methods. It's about inheriting and evolving psychological manipulation techniques that have been refined over decades. The charm weapon has specific components that remain consistent across eras. First, the initial assessment phase. Predators learn to read potential victims like psychological profiles. They identify vulnerability markers within seconds. Second, The mirroring phase. This is where the predator becomes whoever the victim needs them to be. If the victim seems lonely, the predator becomes companionate. If they seem insecure, the predator becomes validating. Third, the trust-building phase. This is where the psychological manipulation becomes most sophisticated. The predator creates artificial intimacy through shared experiences, secrets, and gradually increasing emotional investment. Fourth, the isolation phase. Once trust is established, the predator begins subtly separating the victim from their support networks. This happens so gradually that the victim often doesn't realize it's occurring. Fifth, the exploitation phase. With trust established and isolation achieved, the predator can begin manipulating the victim for their ultimate purpose. By this point, the victim's psychological defenses have been systematically dismantled. What's particularly disturbing is how these phases have been refined across generations. Early predators like H. Holmes used these techniques instinctively. Later predators like Bundy studied psychology formally and applied academic knowledge to predatory behavior. Modern predators have access to decades of criminal psychology research. They understand neuroscience, social psychology, and behavioral analysis in ways that previous generations couldn't have imagined. The internet has also created new opportunities for predatory charm. Social media allows predators to craft perfect psychological profiles before ever meeting victims in person. They can study photos, posts, and interactions to build detailed psychological maps. Dating apps provide unprecedented access to potential victims' psychological profiles. Predators can swipe through hundreds of profiles, identifying the most vulnerable targets based on subtle cues in photos and biographical information. The evolution of predatory charm reflects broader changes in our understanding of human psychology. As we've learned more about how the mind works, predators have learned to exploit these mechanisms more effectively. But there's something else happening here. The democratization of psychological knowledge has made predatory techniques more accessible. What once required intuitive genius now can be learned from books, courses, and online resources. This is why studying the evolution of predatory charm is so important. We need to understand how these techniques develop and spread in order to protect potential victims and identify predators before they can act. The psychology of charm as a weapon reveals something disturbing about human nature. We are fundamentally social creatures, evolved to trust and connect. Predators exploit these evolutionary advantages against us. Understanding this exploitation is the first step in developing psychological immunity. When we know how predatory charm works, we can recognize it. When we can recognize it, we can protect ourselves and others. The patterns we're about to explore span decades and continents, but they reveal consistent psychological principles that every person should understand. Not to become paranoid, but to become informed. The charm weapon is real. It's been refined across generations, and it's more sophisticated today than it's ever been. But knowledge is power, and psychological awareness is protection. In the segments that follow, we'll examine specific predators who mastered the art of weaponized charm, starting with the techniques that became the foundation for modern predatory psychology. Bundy's methods weren't just effective in the 1970s. They created a template that predators still use today. His psychological techniques have been studied, adapted, and refined by countless criminals across the decades. The most chilling aspect of predatory charm is how it evolves. Each generation of predators builds on the successes of previous killers, creating increasingly sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques. This evolution didn't happen by accident. It happened because predators study their predecessors. They analyze what worked, what didn't, and how to improve the psychological impact of their charm. The result is a continuous refinement of predatory techniques that spans decades. What started as intuitive manipulation has become a sophisticated psychological science practiced by predators who understand human nature better than most psychologists. Understanding this evolution is crucial for recognition and prevention. When we know how predatory charm has developed over time, we can identify it more quickly and protect ourselves and others from its effects. Ted Bundy didn't invent predatory charm, but he perfected it for the modern era. His techniques became the template that countless predators have studied and adapted. Understanding Bundy's methods is crucial because they represent the foundation of contemporary predatory psychology. Bundy's charm was never generic. He was a psychological shapeshifter who could adapt his personality to match whatever his target victim needed to see. This wasn't casual manipulation. This was sophisticated psychological warfare. The key to Bundy's success was his ability to conduct rapid personality assessments. Within minutes of encountering a potential victim, he could identify their psychological type, their insecurities, their desires, and their vulnerabilities. He understood that different personality types respond to different types of charm. Introverted victims needed someone who seemed genuinely interested in their thoughts and feelings. Extroverted victims needed someone who could match their energy and enthusiasm. Bundy studied psychology at the University of Washington. He understood concepts like attachment theory, personality disorders, and social psychology. He weaponized academic knowledge for predatory purposes. His campus environment provided the perfect laboratory for refining his techniques. College students were away from home, establishing independence, and often lonely or insecure. They were ideal targets for psychological manipulation. Bundy's physical appearance was crucial to his charm weapon. He was conventionally attractive, well-groomed, and dressed appropriately for his environment. He understood that physical attractiveness creates an initial psychological advantage. But his physical appearance was just the foundation. The real weapon was his psychological adaptability. He could become whoever his victims needed him to be, often within the same conversation. The fake cast technique is what most people remember about Bundy, but the cast was just a prop. The real manipulation was psychological. He would approach victims looking vulnerable and non-threatening, triggering their natural helping instincts. This exploitation of empathy is particularly insidious. Bundy understood that good people want to help others. He weaponized human kindness against his victims, using their compassion as a vulnerability to exploit. His approach wasn't random. He studied potential victims before making contact. He would observe them in coffee shops, libraries, and campus locations. He learned their routines, their preferences, their social patterns. This pre-contact surveillance allowed him to craft perfect psychological profiles. By the time he approached a victim, he already knew exactly what type of person they would find attractive and trustworthy. Bundy's conversational skills were his most dangerous weapon. He could engage anyone in meaningful dialogue within minutes. He understood how to ask questions that made people feel heard and understood. He would mirror his victims' communication styles. If they spoke quickly, he would match their pace. If they were thoughtful and deliberate, he would slow down his own speech patterns to match theirs. The psychological principle behind this mirroring is called rapport building. When someone communicates in a style similar to our own, our brains interpret this as compatibility. We feel more comfortable and trusting. Bundy also understood the power of shared experiences. He would create artificial commonalities with his victims. If they mentioned loving a particular book, he would claim to have read it recently. If they talked about a hobby, he would express similar interests. These weren't random lies. They were carefully crafted psychological hooks designed to create the illusion of deep compatibility. Victims would feel like they had met someone who truly understood them. The timing of Bundy's approach was also calculated. He would often target victims during transitional periods in their lives, starting college, ending relationships, dealing with family stress. These periods of vulnerability made people more susceptible to manipulation. He understood that people in transition are seeking connection and stability. They're more likely to trust someone who seems to offer understanding and support during difficult times. Bundy's intelligence was a crucial component of his charm. He could discuss literature, politics, psychology, and current events with equal sophistication. This intellectual versatility allowed him to connect with victims across different educational and social backgrounds. His law school education provided additional credibility. When he told people he was studying law, they automatically attributed positive qualities to him: intelligence, ambition, moral character. The profession itself became part of his disguise. The most disturbing aspect of Bundy's charm was its authenticity in the moment. He wasn't just pretending to be interested in his victims. He was genuinely fascinated by the psychological manipulation process itself. This meant his charm felt real because, in a twisted way, it was real. He was truly engaged in the process of psychological seduction, even though his ultimate intentions were horrific. Bundy's techniques were so effective that many people who interacted with him, including law enforcement officers, found him likable and credible. Even when he was suspected of crimes, his charm created doubt about his guilt. This is perhaps the most dangerous aspect of predatory charm: its ability to override rational judgment. Even when evidence suggests someone might be dangerous, their charm can make us question our own perceptions. The psychological impact of Bundy's charm extended beyond his immediate victims. Family members, friends, and romantic partners were also manipulated by his techniques. He maintained long-term relationships while actively hunting other victims. This ability to compartmentalize relationships while maintaining charm in multiple contexts demonstrates the sophisticated nature of predatory psychology. It's not just about short-term manipulation, it's about long-term psychological control. Bundy's charm techniques didn't disappear with his execution. They've been studied, analyzed, and unfortunately replicated by subsequent predators who learned from his methods. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit has documented numerous cases where predators explicitly studied Bundy's techniques. His methods became a template for charm-based predation that continues to influence criminal behavior today. Understanding Bundy's specific techniques is crucial for recognition and prevention. When we know how predatory charm works, we can identify it more quickly and protect ourselves and others from its effects. The psychological principles Bundy exploited: mirroring, rapport building, empathy, manipulation, and intellectual seduction, remain effective today. Modern predators use these same techniques, often with technological enhancements that Bundy couldn't have imagined. This is why studying Bundy's methods is so important. He didn't just kill individuals, he created a psychological template that has influenced predatory behavior for decades. His legacy isn't just his crimes, but the techniques he pioneered that continue to be used by others. The next generation of predators built on Bundy's foundation, adapting his techniques for different contexts and technologies. But the core psychological principles remain the same: the weaponization of human connection for predatory purposes. The 1980s brought a new sophistication to predatory charm. While Bundy had operated in the relatively open environment of college campuses, the next generation of predators learned to use charm in more controlled, isolated settings. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, represented a different evolution of charm psychology. Unlike Bundy's clean-cut appeal, Ramirez used dark charisma to attract victims who were drawn to danger and rebellion. This shift demonstrates how predatory charm adapts to cultural changes. The 1980s counterculture movement created opportunities for predators who could embody any establishment appeal rather than conventional attractiveness. Ramirez understood that some people are specifically attracted to dangerous personalities. He weaponized his own dark image, using tattoos, leather clothing, and rebellious attitude as tools of psychological manipulation. His charm wasn't based on seeming safe and trustworthy like Bundy's. Instead, he attracted victims who were seeking excitement, danger, or escape from conventional life. He became their fantasy of dangerous romance. This approach required different psychological skills. Rather than mirroring normalcy, Ramirez had to calibrate exactly how much danger to project. Too little, and he wouldn't attract risk-seeking victims. Too much, and he would trigger genuine fear. The Night Stalker's targeting strategy was also more sophisticated than random selection. He studied potential victims' lifestyles, identifying those who were likely to be attracted to his particular brand of dark charm. His courtroom behavior revealed another dimension of predatory charm, the ability to maintain psychological control even when caught. Ramirez continued to attract followers and romantic interests throughout his trial and imprisonment. This post-capture charm demonstrates the long-term psychological impact these predators can have. Even when their crimes are fully exposed, their charismatic manipulation can continue to influence vulnerable individuals. The 1980s also brought us Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, who represented yet another evolution of predatory charm. His approach was based on seeming completely harmless and forgettable, the opposite of Ramirez's dark magnetism. Ridgway's charm was built on invisibility. He perfected the art of being so unremarkable that victims and witnesses would have difficulty remembering him. This psychological camouflage allowed him to operate for decades without detection. His techniques involved appearing slightly awkward or socially uncomfortable, which made victims feel more confident and in control. This false sense of security was actually a sophisticated manipulation tactic. Ridgway understood that many potential victims were wary of overly smooth or confident men. By appearing somewhat bumbling or nervous, he bypassed their defensive instincts and made them feel psychologically superior. This reverse psychology approach to charm is particularly insidious because it exploits victims' desire to feel helpful and protective. They would let their guard down specifically because he seemed harmless. The Green River Killer also pioneered the use of routine and familiarity as charm weapons. He would establish patterns of interaction with sex workers, building trust through consistency rather than overt charisma. This long-term approach to predatory charm demonstrates how some killers prefer cultivation over immediate manipulation. Rather than charming victims quickly, Ridgway would invest months in building relationships that seemed safe and predictable. His technique reveals an important psychological principle that trust can be built through reliability rather than excitement. Some victims are more susceptible to steady, predictable attention than to dramatic romantic gestures. Dennis Rader BTAK represented another 1,980 seconds innovation in predatory charm, the compartmentalized charmer who maintained separate psychological personas for different contexts. BTK's church leadership role provided him with automatic credibility and trustworthiness in his community. He understood how institutional authority could serve as a foundation for predatory charm. His ability to maintain a completely normal public persona while planning and executing murders demonstrates the sophisticated psychological compartmentalization that characterizes advanced predators. Rader's charm was built on appearing helpful, responsible, and morally upright. He used his church position and community involvement to create a psychological shield that made suspicion nearly impossible. This institutional camouflage approach to predatory charm has been adopted by numerous subsequent predators who seek positions of trust and authority as hunting grounds. The 1980s, predators also began to understand media psychology in more sophisticated ways. They recognized that public attention could be weaponized as part of their charm strategy. Some killers began crafting public personas specifically designed to attract certain types of victims. They understood that media coverage could actually enhance their predatory appeal to specific psychological types. This media manipulation represents a crucial evolution in predatory psychology. Earlier killers tried to avoid attention. 1982 predators learned to use attention as a tool for attracting victims and followers. The decade also saw the emergence of predators who specifically targeted victims' psychological vulnerabilities related to self-esteem and social acceptance. They became experts at identifying and exploiting specific insecurities. These predators would study their victims' social media, personal advertisements, or public behavior to identify exactly what type of validation or acceptance each person was seeking. They would then craft their charm specifically to provide that validation, making victims feel like they had finally found someone who truly understood and appreciated them. This targeted psychological approach required much more sophisticated preparation than earlier predatory methods. It represented a shift from opportunistic charm to strategic psychological warfare. The 1980s also brought technological changes that predators learned to incorporate into their charm strategies. Personal computers, early internet, bulletin boards, and improved telecommunications created new opportunities for psychological manipulation. Some predators began using technology to research potential victims more thoroughly before making contact. They could learn about victims' interests, backgrounds, and psychological profiles before crafting their approach. This technological enhancement of traditional charm techniques created hybrid approaches that combined old psychological principles with new information gathering capabilities. The decade concluded with predators who had synthesized multiple charm approaches: Bundy's intellectual appeal, Ramirez's dangerous magnetism, Ridgway's harmless invisibility, and Rader's institutional credibility. These syntheses, predators could adapt their charm style to match whatever psychological approach would be most effective with each specific victim. They became psychological shapeshifters with multiple charm personas. The 1980s evolution of predatory charm established many techniques that remain current today. The understanding that different victims respond to different types of charm, the use of institutional credibility, and the incorporation of technology all originated in this crucial decade. Most importantly, the 1980s, predators proved that charm as a weapon could be systematically refined and improved. They approached psychological manipulation with the same methodical thinking that professionals apply to legitimate skills. The 1990s marked a revolutionary shift in predatory charm with the integration of early internet technology. Predators began using bulletin boards, chat rooms, and early dating services to enhance their psychological manipulation capabilities. Jeffrey Dahmer's case, though his crimes preceded widespread internet use, demonstrated how predators were beginning to think about victim selection in more systematic, data-driven ways. His apartment became a laboratory for psychological experimentation. Dahmer's charm was built on appearing vulnerable and non-threatening. He perfected the art of seeming like someone who needed protection rather than someone who posed a threat. This psychological inversion became a model for future predators. His technique involved projecting subtle signals of loneliness and social awkwardness that triggered protective instincts in potential victims. He understood that many people are drawn to others who seem to need care or guidance. This vulnerability-based charm approach required careful calibration. Too much neediness would repel victims. Too little would fail to trigger their protective responses. Dahmer found the perfect psychological balance. The early internet provided new opportunities for this type of vulnerability-based manipulation. Chat rooms and bulletin boards allowed predators to craft carefully constructed personas that emphasized loneliness, social difficulty, or need for connection. Online communication also allowed predators to practice their charm techniques with multiple potential victims simultaneously. They could test different approaches and refine their psychological manipulation skills through digital interaction. The anonymity of early internet communication created perfect conditions for predatory charm experimentation. Predators could try different personalities, backgrounds, and psychological approaches without immediate consequences. Andrew Cunanan represented another 1992 innovation, the network charmer, who used social connections as both hunting grounds and psychological weapons. His approach was based on infiltrating social circles rather than targeting isolated victims. Cunanan understood that charm within social networks operates differently than individual manipulation. He learned to become indispensable to group dynamics, making himself seem essential to various social circles. His technique involved becoming the connector who introduced people to each other, organized social events, and maintained relationships between different network members. This central position gave him access to multiple potential victims. The social network approach to predatory charm is particularly dangerous because it uses group psychology to validate the predator's trustworthiness. When multiple people vouch for someone's character, individual suspicions are more easily dismissed. Cunanan also pioneered the use of geographic mobility as a charm enhancement tool. He would establish himself in new social circles in different cities, creating fresh opportunities for manipulation without the burden of established reputation. This geographic shape-shifting approach allowed him to reinvent his persona completely in each new location. He could learn from previous mistakes and refine his charm techniques with each new social network he infiltrated. The 1990s also saw the emergence of predators who understood how to exploit the early internet's information-gathering capabilities. They learned to research potential victims' backgrounds, interests, and social connections before making contact. This research-enhanced charm approach allowed predators to appear incredibly compatible with their victims from the very first interaction. They could reference shared interests, mutual acquaintances, or common experiences that created instant psychological bonds. The illusion of natural compatibility became much easier to create when predators had access to detailed information about their targets before making contact. Victims felt like they were meeting someone who understood them perfectly. Email communication also allowed predators to craft more sophisticated psychological manipulation than was possible through phone calls or face-to-face interaction. They could carefully compose messages designed to trigger specific emotional responses. The asynchronous nature of email communication gave predators time to analyze victims' responses and craft perfectly calibrated follow-up messages. This created more sophisticated psychological manipulation than real-time conversation allowed. Early dating websites provided unprecedented access to victims' psychological profiles. Predators could browse through detailed personal information, photos, and stated preferences to identify the most vulnerable targets. The self-reported nature of dating profiles also gave predators insight into victims' self-perception, insecurities, and desires. This psychological intelligence made their charm techniques much more targeted and effective. Some 1,990 seconds, predators learned to create multiple online personas to test different charm approaches with the same victim. They could determine which psychological approach was most effective before revealing their real identity. This multi-persona testing approach represents a significant evolution in predatory psychology. Rather than relying on intuitive charm, predators began using systematic experimentation to optimize their manipulation techniques. The decade also brought advances in psychological profiling that some predators studied and adapted for their own purposes. FBI behavioral analysis techniques were becoming publicly available through books and documentaries. Ironically, some predators began using law enforcement profiling techniques to better understand their own psychological methods and to identify more vulnerable victim types. This cross-pollination between criminal psychology research and actual predatory behavior created a dangerous feedback loop. Academic understanding of predatory behavior was being used to enhance actual predatory capabilities. The 1990s established many of the technological foundations that modern predators still use today. Online research, digital communication, and network-based targeting all originated during this crucial decade. Predators also began to understand how to use technology to maintain long-term psychological control over multiple victims simultaneously. They could manage relationships with several targets through different communication channels. This technological multiplication of predatory charm represented a quantum leap in the scale and sophistication of psychological manipulation. Single predators could now maintain charm-based relationships with dozens of potential victims. The decade concluded with predators who had successfully integrated traditional psychological manipulation techniques with emerging digital technologies. They had learned to enhance their natural charm abilities through technological tools. Perhaps most importantly, the 1990s proved that predatory charm could be systematically enhanced through technology. The combination of psychological manipulation and digital communication created unprecedented opportunities for sophisticated predatory behavior. The technological integration that began in the 1990s laid the groundwork for the explosion of digitally enhanced predatory charm that would characterize the following decades. By the end of the 1990s, predatory charm had evolved from an intuitive skill to a technologically enhanced capability that could be systematically developed and refined through digital tools and online experimentation. The stage was set for the dramatic expansion of predatory charm capabilities that would emerge with social media, dating apps, and advanced digital communication technologies in the following decades. The 2000s brought the internet into mainstream use, fundamentally transforming how predatory charm could be deployed. Social media platforms, advanced dating websites, and ubiquitous digital communication created unprecedented opportunities for psychological manipulation. Dennis Rader's capture in 2005 revealed how even traditional predators were beginning to incorporate digital tools into their psychological manipulation strategies. His use of computer communications to taunt law enforcement showed the evolution of predatory psychology. The emergence of MySpace and early Facebook provided predators with detailed psychological profiles of potential victims that previous generations could never have imagined. Personal photos, relationship status, interests, and social connections became readily available intelligence. Predators learned to use social media stalking as preparation for charm-based approaches. They could study potential victims' online behavior for weeks or months before making contact, crafting perfect psychological profiles. This digital surveillance capability allowed predators to appear incredibly intuitive and understanding during initial interactions. Victims felt like they were meeting someone who could read their minds, when actually the predator had simply done extensive online research. The 2000s also brought the proliferation of online dating platforms that operated with much more sophisticated matching algorithms. Predators learned to game these systems to gain access to psychologically vulnerable targets. Dating website questionnaires provided predators with detailed psychological assessments of potential victims. Questions about relationship history, personal values, and emotional needs gave predators unprecedented insight into their targets' vulnerabilities. Some predators began creating multiple dating profiles with different personalities to test which psychological approach would be most effective with specific victim types. This systematic experimentation refined their charm techniques. The asynchronous nature of online dating communication allowed predators to craft perfect responses to every interaction. They could research appropriate replies, consult manipulation guides, and carefully construct each message for maximum psychological impact. Email and instant messaging also provided opportunities for more sophisticated psychological grooming than previous generations had available. Predators could maintain long-term manipulation campaigns that gradually built trust and dependency. The 2000s introduced the concept of digital breadcrumbing, leaving small traces of attention and validation that kept victims psychologically engaged without requiring major time investment from the predator. This technique allowed single predators to maintain psychological manipulation relationships with dozens of potential victims simultaneously, using automated messages and scheduled communications to maintain the illusion of personal attention. Scott Peterson's case demonstrated how predators were beginning to use digital communications to maintain double lives more effectively. Cell phones and email allowed for compartmentalized relationships that were nearly impossible to detect. Peterson's ability to maintain charm-based relationships with multiple women while married and planning murder showed how technology was enabling more sophisticated psychological compartmentalization. The digital age also brought new opportunities for predators to use shared online experiences as bonding mechanisms. Gaming, chat rooms, and forum discussions provided platforms for building artificial intimacy. Predators learned to use online gaming and virtual environments as hunting grounds, where they could gradually build relationships with victims over extended periods while appearing to share genuine interests and experiences. The 2000s marked the beginning of data-driven predatory charm. Some killers began keeping digital records of their psychological manipulation techniques, tracking which approaches were most effective with different victim types. This systematic documentation of predatory psychology represented a shift toward treating charm as a learnable skill that could be continuously improved through data analysis and technique refinement. Online forums and communities also provided platforms where predators could share manipulation techniques with each other, creating informal networks for exchanging psychological manipulation strategies. The democratization of predatory knowledge through internet communities meant that sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques were becoming accessible to individuals who might not have developed them independently. Photoshop and early image manipulation tools allowed predators to create more compelling online personas. They could enhance their physical appearance in photos or completely fabricate their visual identity. This digital deception capability added a new layer to predatory charm, the ability to create completely fictional physical personas that were perfectly calibrated to attract specific victim types. The 2000s also brought GPS technology and location-based services that predators learned to exploit for tracking and approaching victims. They could monitor potential targets' locations and create seemingly coincidental encounters. This technological stalking capability allowed predators to orchestrate meetings that appeared natural and spontaneous, when actually they were carefully planned psychological ambushes. Cell phone technology provided predators with constant access to their victims through calls, texts, and early multimedia messaging. This created opportunities for continuous psychological pressure and manipulation. The always-on nature of digital communication meant that predators could maintain psychological control over victims 24 hours a day, gradually increasing their influence through constant low-level manipulation. Credit card and financial data available online also gave predators new insights into victims' lifestyles, financial situations, and psychological vulnerabilities related to money and security. Some predators began using financial intelligence to tailor their charm approaches, appearing as solutions to victims' economic problems or as partners who could provide financial security. The 2000s established the foundation for algorithmic predatory charm using data analysis and systematic approaches to optimize psychological manipulation techniques. By the end of the decade, predatory charm had evolved from an intuitive interpersonal skill to a technologically enhanced capability that could be systematically developed, refined, and deployed at scale. The digital transformation of the 2000s created the technological infrastructure that would enable even more sophisticated predatory charm techniques in the following decade. Most importantly, the 2000s proved that technology could amplify predatory charm exponentially, allowing individual predators to affect many more victims with much more sophisticated psychological manipulation than had ever been possible before. The stage was set for the social media explosion that would create unprecedented opportunities for charm-based predatory behavior in the 2010s and beyond. The 2010s brought an unprecedented explosion in social media platforms that fundamentally transformed predatory charm. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and dating apps created a digital ecosystem perfectly designed for psychological manipulation at a massive scale. Luca Magnotta represented the new generation of digitally native predators who understood how to use social media not just for victim targeting, but for building public personas that enhance their predatory capabilities. Magnotta's use of multiple social media platforms to create fictional identities demonstrated how predators had learned to weaponize digital identity construction. He could become anyone his victims needed him to be, with fabricated online histories to support his claims. The visual nature of Instagram and Facebook provided predators with unprecedented insight into victims' daily lives, relationships, emotional states, and psychological vulnerabilities. Every posted photo became intelligence for potential manipulation. Predators learned to analyze social media posts for microsignals of loneliness, relationship problems, career stress, or family difficulties. These emotional vulnerabilities became targeting criteria for charm-based approaches. The stories features on various platforms gave predators real-time access to victims' activities and emotional states. They could time their approaches to coincide with moments of maximum psychological vulnerability. Dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, and Occupid provided predators with unprecedented access to potential victims who were actively seeking romantic connections. The swipe-based selection process allowed for rapid targeting and approach testing. The The gamification of dating through these apps also normalized rapid relationship progression and intimate communication with strangers, creating perfect conditions for predatory charm deployment. Predators learn to use dating app algorithms to their advantage, creating profiles that would be shown to the most psychologically vulnerable users based on their previous swiping patterns and profile interactions. The location-based features of dating apps also allowed predators to target victims in specific geographic areas, creating opportunities for seemingly coincidental real-world encounters. Social media also enabled predators to conduct much more sophisticated background research on potential victims. Facebook's friend networks, tagged photos, and check-in locations provided detailed maps of victims' social connections and daily routines. This intelligence allowed predators to approach victims with intimate knowledge of their interests, friends, and activities, creating the illusion of natural compatibility or mutual connections. LinkedIn provided predators with professional information that could be used to craft charm approaches based on career ambitions, workplace stress, or professional networking opportunities. The professional networking aspect of LinkedIn also gave predators a legitimate reason to contact victims, using career-related communication as a gateway to personal relationship building. Instagram influencer culture created new opportunities for predators to build large followings of potential victims through carefully crafted public personas that projected wealth, success, or lifestyle appeal. Some predators learned to use influencer psychology to attract victims who were seeking validation, lifestyle enhancement, or association with successful individuals. The comment and direct message features of social media platforms provided multiple pathways for predators to initiate contact with victims, allowing them to test different approaches and escalate communication gradually. Social media's algorithmic recommendation systems also worked in predators' favor, suggesting their profiles to users who fit specific psychological or demographic criteria that indicated potential vulnerability. The 2010s brought the emergence of catfishing as a sophisticated form of predatory charm, where predators would create completely fictional online identities to manipulate victims over extended periods. These long-term digital manipulation campaigns could last for months or years, creating deep emotional bonds based entirely on fabricated personas and artificial shared experiences. Snapchat introduced ephemeral messaging that predators learned to exploit for more intimate communication that left no permanent digital trail. The temporary nature of messages created a false sense of privacy and security. The visual communication features of Snapchat also allowed predators to gradually escalate intimate interactions while maintaining plausible deniability about their intentions. Facebook's detailed privacy settings and friend categorization features allowed predators to compartmentalize their online relationships, showing different personas to different groups of potential victims. This digital compartmentalization enabled predators to maintain multiple simultaneous charm-based relationships without victims discovering each other's existence. The 2010s also brought sophisticated analytics tools that some predators began using to track and optimize their social media manipulation techniques. They could measure engagement rates, response times, and emotional reactions to their posts and messages. This data-driven approach to predatory charm represented a significant evolution from intuitive manipulation to systematic optimization of psychological influence techniques. Social media advertising platforms also provided predators with detailed demographic and psychographic targeting capabilities that could be used to identify and reach potential victims with specific psychological vulnerabilities. Some predators learn to use targeted advertising to promote their fake profiles or charm-based content to users who fit their preferred victim criteria. The viral nature of social media content also allowed predators to build public credibility and social proof for their fabricated personas through carefully orchestrated online activity. By creating viral posts, gaining large followings, or receiving public endorsements, predators could build artificial social credibility that enhanced their charm effectiveness. The 2010s established social media as the primary hunting ground for modern predatory charm. The combination of detailed personal information, multiple communication channels, and sophisticated targeting capabilities created unprecedented opportunities for psychological manipulation. The decade also demonstrated how predatory charm could scale exponentially through digital platforms. Single predators could now maintain manipulation relationships with hundreds of potential victims simultaneously. Perhaps most importantly, the 2010s proved that social media platforms had inadvertently created the perfect ecosystem for predatory behavior, combining detailed personal information, multiple communication pathways, and algorithmic amplification of predatory content. The social media explosion of the 2010s created the foundation for even more sophisticated predatory charm techniques that would emerge with artificial intelligence and advanced data analytics in the following decade. By the end of the 2010s, predatory charm had evolved into a technologically enhanced capability that could operate at unprecedented scale and sophistication through social media platforms. The 2020s have brought artificial intelligence and machine learning into the realm of predatory charm, creating possibilities for psychological manipulation that previous generations of predators could never have imagined. Modern predators are beginning to use AI-powered tools to analyze potential victims' social media profiles, identifying psychological vulnerabilities with algorithmic precision that surpasses human intuition. Sentiment analysis tools allow predators to track victims' emotional states across multiple platforms over extended periods, creating detailed psychological profiles that reveal optimal timing for manipulation attempts. Natural language processing algorithms can analyze victims' writing patterns, vocabulary choices, and communication styles to identify personality types, educational backgrounds, and emotional triggers that can be exploited. Some predators are using AI-powered chatbots to maintain simultaneous conversations with hundreds of potential victims, using machine learning to optimize their responses based on what generates the most positive engagement. These AI-enhanced communication tools can learn from successful manipulation attempts and continuously improve their effectiveness, creating predatory charm capabilities that evolve automatically without human intervention. Deepfake technology has created new possibilities for visual deception that make catfishing exponentially more sophisticated. Predators can now create realistic video content of completely fictional personas. This visual manipulation capability allows predators to maintain long-term relationships with victims who believe they're communicating with real people, when actually they're interacting with AI-generated personas. Machine learning algorithms can analyze millions of successful predatory interactions to identify patterns and techniques that are most effective with specific victim types, creating data-driven approaches to psychological manipulation. Predictive analytics tools allow predators to identify potential victims who are entering vulnerable life phases, job changes, relationship breakups, family stress when they're most susceptible to manipulation. Social media scraping tools powered by AI can gather comprehensive psychological profiles of potential victims from their entire digital footprint, including deleted posts, comment history, and interaction patterns. This level of digital surveillance provides predators with more detailed knowledge of their victims than most family members possess, creating unprecedented opportunities for targeted psychological manipulation. Voice synthesis technology allows predators to create fake phone conversations and voice messages that can enhance their fictional personas and create more believable emotional connections. The combination of visual deepfakes and voice synthesis creates complete multimedia deception capabilities that can sustain long-term psychological manipulation campaigns. AI-powered dating app optimization tools help predators create profiles that are algorithmically designed to appeal to the most vulnerable users on each platform, maximizing their access to potential victims. These tools can analyze successful predatory profiles and automatically generate optimized content, photos, and messaging strategies that are proven to attract vulnerable individuals. Automated social media monitoring allows predators to track multiple victims' activities across all platforms simultaneously, identifying opportunities for intervention or manipulation in real time. This always-on surveillance capability means that predators can respond to victims' emotional states immediately, providing support or attention exactly when victims are most psychologically receptive. Natural language generation tools enable predators to create personalized manipulation content at scale, generating hundreds of individually tailored messages that appear to be personally written for each victim. The automation of personalized manipulation represents a quantum leap in predatory capabilities, allowing individual predators to maintain deep psychological relationships with vastly more victims than was previously possible. Facial recognition technology integrated with social media platforms allows predators to identify potential victims in public spaces and immediately access their online profiles and psychological vulnerabilities. This real-world to digital tracking capability creates opportunities for predators to orchestrate seemingly coincidental encounters that are actually carefully planned psychological ambushes. AI-powered psychological profiling tools can analyze victims' online behavior to predict their responses to different manipulation techniques, allowing predators to select the most effective approach for each individual. These predictive capabilities remove much of the guesswork from predatory charm, creating systematic approaches to psychological manipulation that are optimized for each specific victim. Machine learning analysis of successful predatory techniques allows modern killers to learn from the entire history of predatory psychology, automatically incorporating the most effective elements from decades of criminal behavior. This historical synthesis creates modern predators who possess the accumulated psychological knowledge of all previous generations, enhanced by algorithmic optimization and digital amplification. The Internet of Things provides predators with access to victims' smart home devices, fitness trackers, and other connected technologies that reveal intimate details about their daily routines and psychological states. This ubiquitous surveillance capability creates opportunities for predators to appear incredibly intuitive and caring, when actually they're simply accessing detailed data about victims' lives. Cryptocurrency and digital payment systems provide predators with new opportunities to exploit victims financially while maintaining anonymity and avoiding traditional banking oversight. The integration of financial exploitation with psychological manipulation creates new hybrid approaches to predatory behavior that combine emotional and economic control. Social media algorithm manipulation allows sophisticated predators to influence what content victims see, gradually shaping their worldview and emotional state to make them more susceptible to manipulation. This algorithmic influence represents a form of environmental psychological control that operates below victims' conscious awareness, creating subtle but powerful manipulation effects. The democratization of AI tools means that predatory charm enhancement capabilities that were once available only to sophisticated criminals are now accessible to anyone with basic technical knowledge. This accessibility explosion has the potential to dramatically increase the number of individuals capable of sophisticated predatory behavior, creating a new category of AI-enhanced predators. Modern predatory charm represents the culmination of decades of psychological manipulation refinement, enhanced by artificial intelligence and deployed at unprecedented scale through digital platforms. The combination of historical predatory knowledge, AI optimization, and ubiquitous digital surveillance creates predatory capabilities that exceed anything previous generations could have imagined. Understanding these modern capabilities is crucial for protection and prevention, as traditional awareness of predatory behavior may be insufficient to recognize AI-enhanced manipulation techniques. The evolution of predatory charm from intuitive interpersonal skill to AI-enhanced systematic capability represents one of the most dangerous developments in modern criminal psychology. The future of predatory charm will likely involve even more sophisticated AI integration, creating possibilities for psychological manipulation that we can barely imagine today. The transmission of predatory charm techniques across generations represents one of the most disturbing aspects of serial killer psychology. Unlike genetic inheritance, these psychological skills are learned, refined, and passed down through cultural mechanisms. True crime media has become the primary vehicle for charm technique transmission. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and films about charismatic killers inadvertently serve as training materials for future predators. When media focuses on how killers charm their victims, it provides detailed instruction in psychological manipulation techniques. Future predators study these accounts like textbooks, learning from the successes and failures of previous killers. The romanticization of certain serial killers in popular culture creates aspirational models for individuals with predatory inclinations. Ted Bundy's continued cultural fascination demonstrates how charm-based killers become inadvertent role models. Online communities dedicated to true crime often include detailed discussions of manipulation techniques, victim selection strategies, and psychological control methods. These forums become informal training grounds for predatory behavior. Some individuals join true crime communities specifically to learn predatory techniques, using genuine crime interest as cover for studying manipulation methods. The line between fascination and instruction becomes dangerously blurred. The psychological profile of individuals most likely to inherit predatory charm techniques includes specific personality traits and psychological vulnerabilities that make them susceptible to this dark education. Narcissistic personality disorder creates a foundation for predatory charm inheritance. Individuals with narcissistic traits are drawn to the power and control that effective manipulation provides, making them eager students of predatory techniques. Antisocial personality disorder provides the moral flexibility necessary to implement predatory charm without ethical constraints. These individuals can study manipulation techniques without the emotional barriers that would prevent most people from using them. Borderline personality disorder can create unstable individuals who use predatory charm as a tool for emotional regulation and relationship control. The manipulation becomes a coping mechanism for their psychological instability. Psychopathic traits, particularly the lack of empathy and remorse, allow individuals to implement predatory charm techniques without emotional interference. They can manipulate others purely as a strategic exercise. The inheritance process often begins with fantasy and gradually progresses to actual implementation. Individuals start by imagining themselves using the techniques they've learned about, mentally rehearsing manipulation scenarios. This fantasy rehearsal stage is crucial to the inheritance process. It allows potential predators to overcome psychological barriers to manipulation by gradually normalizing predatory behavior in their minds. Social media provides new opportunities for practicing inherited charm techniques in low-stakes environments. Individuals can test manipulation methods through online interactions before attempting more serious predatory behavior. Dating apps serve as training grounds where aspiring predators can practice inherited charm techniques on multiple targets simultaneously, refining their skills through trial and error. The gamification of online dating creates perfect conditions for predatory charm practice. The swipe-based selection process and multiple simultaneous conversations allow for systematic technique testing and refinement. Video games and virtual environments also provide opportunities for practicing psychological manipulation skills in consequence-free settings, allowing individuals to develop predatory capabilities gradually. The inheritance of predatory charm techniques is accelerated by the detailed case studies available through criminal psychology research. Academic books and papers provide sophisticated analysis of manipulation methods. Law enforcement training materials, behavioral analysis documents, and FBI profiling resources inadvertently serve as advanced instruction in predatory psychology for individuals with criminal intentions. The Internet has democratized access to information about predatory techniques that was once available only to law enforcement and academic researchers. This knowledge proliferation increases the rate of charm technique inheritance. Online courses in persuasion, influence, and social psychology can be weaponized by individuals seeking to develop predatory capabilities. Legitimate educational content becomes training material for manipulation. The inheritance process is often unconscious initially. Individuals absorb predatory techniques through media consumption without consciously intending to use them for harmful purposes. This unconscious absorption makes the inheritance process particularly dangerous, as individuals may develop predatory capabilities without recognizing the ethical implications of their psychological knowledge. The normalization of manipulation in business, politics, and social media creates cultural acceptance of psychological influence techniques that can be adapted for predatory purposes. Self-help books about charisma, influence, and persuasion often contain techniques that can be weaponized by individuals with predatory inclinations, blurring the line between legitimate skill development and manipulation training. The inheritance of predatory charm is not limited to potential killers. These techniques spread to individuals involved in financial fraud, emotional abuse, cult leadership, and other forms of psychological exploitation. This broad inheritance pattern means that predatory charm techniques affect far more people than just the victims of serial killers. The psychological damage spreads throughout society as these skills are learned and implemented. The digital age has accelerated the inheritance process exponentially. What once required personal contact with predatory individuals or access to restricted information now can be learned through casual internet browsing. Social media algorithms can inadvertently promote predatory content to individuals who show interest in manipulation psychology, creating recommendation pathways that facilitate charm technique inheritance. The inheritance of predatory charm techniques represents a form of cultural contagion that spreads psychological manipulation capabilities throughout society at an increasing rate. Understanding this inheritance process is crucial for developing prevention strategies that can interrupt the transmission of predatory techniques before they result in harmful behavior. The next generation of predators will inherit not just traditional charm techniques, but also AI-enhanced capabilities and digital manipulation methods that previous generations couldn't have imagined. This technological inheritance means that future predatory charm will be more sophisticated and effective than anything we've seen in previous decades. The psychological inheritance of predatory charm techniques represents one of the most serious long-term threats from serial killer psychology: the perpetual refinement and transmission of manipulation capabilities across generations. Understanding why certain individuals are more susceptible to predatory charm is crucial for both prevention and recognition. Victim psychology reveals specific vulnerabilities that predators learn to identify and exploit across all time periods. Attachment disorders create particularly dangerous vulnerabilities to predatory charm. Individuals with anxious attachment styles desperately seek validation and connection, making them ideal targets for predators who offer artificial intimacy. These individuals often experienced inconsistent caregiving in childhood, creating adult patterns of seeking intense relationships with charismatic individuals who seem to offer the security they've always craved. Avoidant attachment styles create different vulnerabilities. These individuals fear intimacy but are drawn to charming predators who seem to offer connection without overwhelming emotional demands initially. Disorganized attachment, often resulting from childhood trauma, creates the most dangerous vulnerability pattern. These individuals simultaneously crave and fear intimate connection, making them susceptible to predators who alternate between charm and psychological distance. Low self-esteem provides predators with easily exploitable psychological territory. Individuals who don't value themselves highly are more likely to be flattered by attention from charismatic strangers and less likely to question their motives. Predators specifically target individuals with self-worth issues because they're grateful for attention and validation. This gratitude creates psychological debt that predators can exploit for increasing levels of control and manipulation. Recent life transitions create temporary vulnerabilities that predators learn to identify and exploit. Moving to new cities, starting college, ending relationships, or experiencing family stress all create periods of increased susceptibility. During transition periods, individuals are seeking new connections and support systems. They're more likely to trust charismatic strangers who offer understanding and assistance during difficult times. Social isolation increases susceptibility to predatory charm dramatically. Individuals who lack strong social support networks are more likely to form intense connections with charming strangers who fill their social and emotional needs. Predators actively seek out socially isolated individuals because they face less scrutiny from friends and family members who might recognize manipulation patterns or express concerns about the relationship. Childhood trauma creates complex vulnerabilities that predators learn to recognize through subtle behavioral cues. Trauma survivors often have difficulty trusting their own instincts about people's intentions. This self-doubt makes trauma survivors more likely to dismiss their own concerns about charming individuals who trigger their intuitive warning systems. They second-guess their protective instincts. Individuals with histories of emotional abuse are particularly vulnerable because they've been conditioned to accept manipulative behavior as normal relationship dynamics. Predatory charm feels familiar rather than alarming. Previous abuse also creates trauma bonds that predators can exploit. Survivors are often drawn to intense relationships that recreate familiar psychological patterns, even when those patterns are harmful. Economic vulnerability creates additional susceptibility factors. Individuals experiencing financial stress are more likely to be attracted to charming predators who offer financial security or material benefits. Predators learn to identify economic vulnerability through subtle cues: older clothing, mention, financial stress, or living situations that suggest financial difficulties. They position themselves as solutions to these problems. Educational backgrounds can create both vulnerability and protection. Higher education often provides analytical skills that help recognize manipulation, but it can also create intellectual arrogance that makes individuals believe they're too smart to be deceived. This intellectual overconfidence can make highly educated individuals particularly vulnerable to sophisticated predators who appeal to their sense of intellectual superiority while simultaneously manipulating them. Cultural backgrounds influence susceptibility patterns in complex ways. Individuals from cultures that emphasize politeness, hospitality, and trust may be more vulnerable to initial charm approaches. Religious backgrounds can create both protection and vulnerability. Strong religious communities often provide social support that protects against predatory charm, but religious individuals may be more trusting and less suspicious of charismatic strangers. Age-related vulnerabilities vary significantly. Young adults are vulnerable due to inexperience and identity formation issues. Older adults may be vulnerable due to social isolation and cognitive changes that affect judgment. Teenagers and young adults are particularly susceptible because they're still developing their understanding of normal relationship patterns and may mistake intensity for genuine connection. Mental health conditions create specific vulnerability patterns that predators learn to recognize and exploit. Depression often creates feelings of worthlessness that make individuals grateful for attention from charismatic strangers. Anxiety disorders can make individuals more dependent on others for emotional regulation, creating opportunities for predators to position themselves as sources of comfort and stability. Bipolar disorder creates vulnerability during both manic and depressive episodes. During mania, individuals may make impulsive decisions about relationships. During depression, they may be more susceptible to rescue fantasies. Personality disorders create complex vulnerability patterns. Borderline personality disorder creates intense fear of abandonment that predators can exploit through cycles of attention and withdrawal. Narcissistic personality disorder can make individuals vulnerable to predators who appeal to their sense of specialness and superiority, creating relationships based on mutual manipulation that often spiral out of control. Substance abuse issues create multiple vulnerability factors. Addiction affects judgment, creates financial problems, and often results in social isolation, all factors that increase susceptibility to predatory charm. Predators often target individuals in recovery because they're seeking new social connections and support systems, while their judgment may still be compromised by previous substance abuse. Family dynamics also influence charm susceptibility. Individuals from dysfunctional families may have normalized manipulative behavior and struggle to recognize predatory patterns in adult relationships. Conversely, individuals from very protective families may be naive about manipulation tactics and more trusting of charismatic strangers because they haven't been exposed to predatory behavior. The intersection of multiple vulnerability factors creates exponentially increased risk. Individuals dealing with recent trauma, social isolation, and financial stress simultaneously are prime targets for predatory charm. Predators learn to identify these vulnerability intersections through careful observation and conversation, targeting individuals who display multiple susceptibility factors. Understanding victim psychology doesn't blame victims for predatory behavior. Instead, It reveals how predators systematically exploit normal human vulnerabilities for harmful purposes. Recognition of these vulnerability patterns is the first step in developing personal protection strategies and helping others recognize when they might be particularly susceptible to manipulation. The goal of understanding victim psychology is empowerment through awareness, not victim blaming or fear-mongering. Knowledge of these patterns can help individuals protect themselves and others. Modern predators have access to detailed information about victim psychology through books, research, and online resources, making their targeting more sophisticated than ever before. This evolution in predatory knowledge about victim psychology requires corresponding evolution in public awareness and protection strategies to maintain safety in an increasingly dangerous landscape. Learning to recognize predatory charm requires understanding the specific patterns that distinguish manipulation from genuine attraction. These recognition skills can be developed through awareness of consistent behavioral markers that appear across different predators. Excessive charm during initial interactions is often the first warning sign. Genuine attraction builds gradually, while predatory charm is often overwhelming from the first encounter, designed to bypass normal psychological defenses. Predators typically demonstrate charm that seems disproportionate to the length of the relationship. They express intense interest, understanding, or emotional connection far too quickly for the actual level of acquaintance. Love bombing represents one of the most recognizable patterns of predatory charm. This involves overwhelming potential victims with attention, gifts, compliments, and declarations of special connection during the early stages of interaction. The intensity of love bombing serves a specific psychological purpose. It creates artificial intimacy that makes victims feel obligated to reciprocate the attention and emotional investment they're receiving. Another key recognition pattern is the predator's ability to seem perfect for their target. They mirror interests, values, and preferences with suspicious accuracy, often claiming to share obscure hobbies or specific cultural references. This mirroring goes beyond normal compatibility. Predators demonstrate knowledge of or interest in things that are specifically meaningful to their target, creating the illusion of supernatural compatibility. Isolation tactics often begin subtly during the charm phase. Predators gradually discourage victims from spending time with friends or family, positioning themselves as the only person who truly understands the victim. These isolation attempts are disguised as romantic gestures or expressions of desire for exclusive time together. The predator frames isolation as proof of special connection rather than manipulation. Inconsistent stories about personal background represent another crucial warning sign. Predators often provide different versions of their history, education, or experiences because they're crafting their persona to match what each victim wants to hear. Victims should be alert to contradictions in basic biographical information, claims about achievements that can't be verified, or reluctance to provide specific details about past experiences. Pushing for rapid relationship progression is a consistent pattern across predatory charm cases. Predators want to establish psychological control quickly, before victims can conduct thorough background checks or consult with friends and family. This pressure for rapid intimacy includes requests for personal information, financial details, or sexual involvement much earlier than would be normal in genuine relationship development. Excessive interest in the victim's vulnerabilities is another key recognition pattern. While genuine partners show appropriate concern for difficulties, predators demonstrate unusual fascination with trauma, insecurities, or psychological wounds. Predators ask probing questions about past abuse, family problems, or emotional difficulties, not out of genuine care, but to gather intelligence for future manipulation. Grandiose claims about personal achievements, connections, or capabilities that seem designed to impress rather than inform represent significant warning signs of predatory charm. These claims often include stories about wealth, important relationships, or extraordinary experiences that are difficult to verify, but are specifically calibrated to appeal to the victim's aspirations or insecurities. The inability or unwillingness to provide verifiable contact information represents a practical warning sign that victims should never ignore. Predators often avoid giving real phone numbers, addresses, or workplace information. When pressed for verification, predators typically provide elaborate explanations for why normal contact information isn't available, often involving claims about privacy concerns or professional requirements. Emotional manipulation tactics become apparent during the charm phase for those who know what to look for. Predators use guilt, sympathy, or obligation to maintain control over victims' attention and decisions. These manipulation attempts are often disguised as vulnerability or emotional openness, with predators sharing fabricated personal struggles designed to trigger protective or caretaking responses. Testing boundary violations represents another consistent pattern. Predators gradually push against victims' stated boundaries to test their willingness to compromise their own comfort for the relationship. These tests start small but escalate systematically. A predator might ignore a stated preference, show up uninvited, or continue conversations after being asked to stop, gauging the victim's resistance to boundary violations. Financial probing often occurs during the charm phase, with predators asking seemingly casual questions about income, savings, debts, or financial obligations that go beyond normal relationship discussions. This financial intelligence gathering is often disguised as concern for the victim's well-being or interest in planning shared activities, but it serves to identify potential financial exploitation opportunities. Technology manipulation represents a modern warning sign that many people don't recognize. Predators often request access to social media accounts, email passwords, or location tracking under the guise of trust building or safety. These technological intrusions are often presented as romantic gestures or practical arrangements, but they serve to gather intelligence and establish digital control over victims. Resistance to meeting friends or family members is a significant warning sign that indicates predatory intentions. Genuine romantic partners are typically eager to integrate into their partner's social circle. Predators avoid social integration because friends and family members are more likely to recognize manipulation patterns or express concerns about the relationship dynamic. Excessive availability at unusual times can indicate predatory behavior. While attention is flattering, predators often demonstrate availability that seems inconsistent with claimed work schedules or other obligations. This unusual availability often results from predators having fewer genuine commitments than they claim, or from prioritizing manipulation activities over legitimate responsibilities. Emotional volatility that seems designed to test the victim's loyalty represents another pattern of predatory charm. Predators may create dramatic emotional situations to gauge how much disruption victims will tolerate. These emotional tests serve to establish dominance and identify victims who are willing to sacrifice their own emotional stability to maintain the relationship. The key to recognition is trusting instinctive responses while also analyzing behavioral patterns objectively. If something feels wrong, it probably is, even if the person seems charming and appealing. Multiple warning signs appearing together represent exponentially increased danger. Single red flags might indicate personality quirks, but patterns of concerning behavior indicate potential predatory intentions. Documentation of interactions can help victims recognize patterns that might not be apparent in individual encounters. Keeping records of conversations, promises, and behavioral changes can reveal manipulation patterns. The most important recognition skill is maintaining perspective and seeking outside opinions when unusual relationship patterns emerge. Predatory charm is designed to overwhelm judgment, making external validation crucial for accurate assessment. The digital era has created unprecedented challenges for recognizing predatory charm. As traditional warning signs become harder to detect through online communication and social media interaction, profile authenticity verification has become exponentially more difficult with advanced photo editing, deepfake technology, and AI-generated content. Even video calls can now be manipulated in real time, making visual verification unreliable. Predators can maintain completely fabricated online personas supported by years of fake social media history, fabricated photos, and artificial social connections that create convincing digital identities. The asynchronous nature of digital communication allows predators unlimited time to craft perfect responses, research appropriate replies, and consult manipulation resources between interactions. This response time advantage means that digital predatory charm can appear more thoughtful, insightful, and emotionally intelligent than it actually is, because every communication is carefully calculated. Social media stalking capabilities provide predators with detailed victim intelligence that makes their charm seem incredibly intuitive and personally relevant, when actually it's based on extensive digital surveillance. Dating app algorithms inadvertently facilitate predatory targeting by showing predators to users who fit specific psychological vulnerability criteria based on their previous swiping patterns and profile interactions. The gamification of dating through apps normalizes rapid, intimate communication with strangers, making predatory charm progression seem normal rather than suspiciously fast. Multiple platform manipulation allows predators to present different personas across various social media platforms, making comprehensive background verification nearly impossible for potential victims. Geographic verification becomes meaningless when predators can use VPNs, fake location services, and digitally manipulated check-ins to create false impressions about their actual location and lifestyle. Online review and reference fabrication means that predators can create convincing professional and personal references through fake accounts, purchased reviews, and manipulated recommendation systems. The volume of digital communication makes pattern recognition more difficult, as predatory behaviors can be hidden within the normal noise of constant messaging, posting, and online interaction. Cross-platform correlation requires technical skills that most potential victims don't possess, making it difficult to verify consistency across different digital platforms and detect fabricated personas. Automated response systems and chatbot integration allow predators to maintain manipulation relationships with multiple victims simultaneously while appearing to provide personal attention to each individual. Digital footprint manipulation enables predators to selectively delete, modify, or hide aspects of their online history that might reveal predatory patterns or inconsistent personal information. Privacy settings. Exploitation allows predators to control what information victims can access about their digital activities, creating artificial scarcity of verifiable information. Reverse image search evasion techniques enable predators to use stolen photos that won't be detected through standard verification methods, making visual identity confirmation unreliable. Social engineering through digital platforms allows predators to gather intelligence about victims from their social connections without directly interacting with the victims initially. Deepfake audio technology means that even voice verification through phone calls can no longer be trusted as authentic proof of identity or genuine emotional expression. Algorithmic amplification can be manipulated by sophisticated predators who understand how to game social media systems to increase their visibility to potential victims. Digital payment systems and cryptocurrency provide predators with methods for financial manipulation that leave fewer traditional paper trails and are harder for victims to trace or recover. Cloud storage and digital evidence destruction capabilities allow predators to eliminate evidence of their manipulation activities more effectively than physical evidence could be destroyed. Encrypted communication platforms provide predators with secure channels for grooming and manipulation that are difficult for law enforcement to monitor or investigate. Virtual reality and metaverse platforms create new environments for predatory charm that combine the anonymity of digital interaction with more immersive psychological manipulation possibilities. Artificial intelligence tools enable predators to create more sophisticated fake personas, generate convincing personal histories, and optimize their manipulation techniques through data analysis. The Internet of Things provides predators with access to victims' smart home devices, fitness trackers, and other connected technologies that reveal intimate details about daily routines and psychological states. Data broker information allows predators to purchase detailed personal information about potential victims, enabling highly targeted charm approaches based on purchased intelligence. Facial recognition technology integrated with social media enables predators to identify potential victims in public spaces and immediately access their online profiles and vulnerability information. The speed of digital communication creates pressure for rapid decision-making that favors predatory manipulation over careful consideration of relationship development. Screen time, addiction, and digital dependency create psychological vulnerabilities that predators can exploit through providing digital attention and validation that feeds victims' technology-related needs. The anonymity and distance of digital communication can make predatory charm feel safer to victims, leading them to share personal information and develop emotional connections more quickly than they would in person. Information overload from constant digital communication makes it harder for victims to step back and analyze relationship patterns objectively, as they're caught up in the continuous stream of interaction. Digital communication also eliminates many of the physical and social cues that humans evolved to use for detecting deception and assessing trustworthiness in face-to-face interactions. The permanent nature of digital communication creates opportunities for predators to refer back to previous conversations and use victims' own words against them in future manipulation attempts. Understanding these digital age challenges is crucial for developing modern recognition skills that can protect against technologically enhanced predatory charm in our increasingly connected world. Developing psychological immunity against predatory charm requires understanding how to strengthen personal defense mechanisms while maintaining the ability to form genuine, healthy relationships. Self-awareness represents the foundation of protection against predatory charm. Understanding your own psychological vulnerabilities, attachment patterns, and emotional triggers helps recognize when these are being exploited. Regular self-assessment of current life circumstances helps identify periods of increased vulnerability transitions, stress, isolation, or emotional difficulties that make predatory targeting more likely. Establishing clear personal boundaries and practicing enforcing them in low-stakes situations builds the psychological strength necessary to maintain boundaries when facing sophisticated manipulation. Boundary practice should include saying no to small requests, maintaining privacy about personal information, and refusing to rush into intimate conversations or commitments with new acquaintances. Social network maintenance provides crucial protection against predatory charm. Strong connections with friends and family create support systems that can recognize manipulation patterns and provide objective perspective. Regular communication with trusted individuals about new relationships ensures that outside observers can identify concerning patterns that might not be apparent to someone experiencing predatory charm. Education about manipulation psychology helps develop recognition skills that can identify predatory behavior before it becomes dangerous. Understanding common tactics makes them less effective. This education should include learning about gaslighting, love bombing, isolation tactics, financial manipulation, and other common predatory strategies that appear across different types of harmful relationships. Digital literacy skills are essential for modern protection, including reverse image searching, social media verification techniques, and understanding how online personas can be fabricated. Learning to use privacy settings effectively, recognizing deepfake technology, and understanding social media algorithms helps protect against digital predatory targeting. Slow relationship progression serves as a natural protection against predatory charm, which typically relies on rapid escalation to establish control before victims can conduct thorough evaluation. Setting specific timelines for relationship milestones, meeting friends and family, sharing personal information, making commitments helps maintain perspective and resist manipulation pressure. Independent verification of claims about background, employment, education, and personal history should be standard practice in any developing relationship, especially those that begin online. This verification process should include checking public records, contacting claimed employers or schools, and meeting people from their social and professional networks. Financial protection strategies include maintaining separate accounts, never sharing financial information early in relationships, and being suspicious of any requests for money or financial assistance. Understanding common financial manipulation tactics helps recognize when charm is being used as a precursor to economic exploitation rather than genuine relationship development. Emotional regulation skills help maintain clear thinking when experiencing intense charm or romantic attention that might otherwise overwhelm rational decision-making processes. Meditation, therapy, and stress management techniques strengthen emotional stability and reduce susceptibility to manipulation tactics that exploit emotional vulnerability. Trust-building protocols establish systematic approaches to developing trust gradually based on consistent behavior over time, rather than impressive initial presentations. These protocols should include specific benchmarks for trustworthiness and requirements for verification before progressing to deeper levels of personal disclosure or commitment. Professional consultation with therapists, counselors, or other mental health professionals can provide objective assessment of relationship dynamics when personal judgment might be compromised. Having established relationships with mental health professionals before needed ensures that professional perspective is available during potentially vulnerable periods. Technology tools for protection include GPS tracking apps shared with trusted contacts, reverse image search capabilities, and background check services for verifying new acquaintances. Using these tools systematically rather than reactively helps establish protective habits that become automatic parts of relationship development. Group decision-making for important relationship milestones involves consulting with trusted friends or family members before making significant commitments or changes based on new relationships. This external input helps counteract the psychological pressure and emotional manipulation that characterizes predatory charm campaigns. Documentation practices include keeping records of communications, promises made, and behavioral patterns that can be reviewed objectively or shared with trusted advisors. Written records help identify inconsistencies and manipulation patterns that might not be apparent in the moment but become clear when reviewed systematically. Crisis planning involves establishing specific procedures to follow if predatory behavior is recognized, including immediate safety measures and support system activation. Having predetermined plans for disengaging from potentially dangerous relationships reduces the likelihood of being talked out of protective actions through continued manipulation. Legal awareness includes understanding restraining orders, harassment laws, and other legal protections available if predatory behavior escalates to criminal activity. Knowing legal options in advance helps victims take protective action quickly rather than having to research options while under psychological pressure. Community education and awareness building helps create social environments where predatory behavior is more likely to be recognized and reported by multiple people rather than being addressed in isolation. Supporting education about predatory psychology in schools, workplaces, and community organizations creates broader social immunity that protects vulnerable individuals. Regular relationship assessment using specific criteria for healthy versus manipulative dynamics helps maintain perspective and identify problems before they become dangerous. These assessments should include evaluation of respect for boundaries, consistency of behavior, integration with social networks, and progression at appropriate speeds. The goal of prevention strategies is not paranoia or social isolation, but rather informed awareness that maintains openness to genuine connection while protecting against exploitation. Effective psychological immunity preserves the ability to form healthy relationships while developing sophisticated recognition skills that can identify and resist predatory manipulation. Understanding that predatory charm specifically targets normal human needs for connection, validation, and understanding helps maintain awareness without becoming overly suspicious of all social interaction. The most effective prevention combines multiple strategies rather than relying on any single protective measure, creating layered defense systems that are difficult for predators to overcome. The future of predatory charm will be shaped by advancing technology, changing social dynamics, and the continuous evolution of psychological manipulation techniques across generations of criminals. Artificial intelligence integration will create predatory capabilities that exceed human psychological manipulation skills. AI-powered systems will analyze victims' digital behavior patterns to predict optimal manipulation strategies with algorithmic precision. Virtual reality environments will provide new platforms for predatory charm that combine the anonymity of digital interaction with immersive psychological experiences that feel more real than traditional online communication. Deepfake technology will advance to the point where complete fabricated personas can be maintained through realistic video interactions, making catfishing exponentially more sophisticated and difficult to detect. Brain-computer interfaces and neurotechnology may eventually allow predators to access victims' neurological responses directly, creating unprecedented opportunities for psychological manipulation based on real-time brain activity monitoring. Genetic psychology research could provide predators with targeting information based on individuals' genetic predispositions to specific psychological vulnerabilities, making victim selection more precise than ever before. The Internet of Things will expand to provide predators with continuous surveillance capabilities through everyday objects, creating comprehensive monitoring of victims' daily routines, emotional states, and psychological patterns. Quantum computing may enable predators to break current encryption methods, accessing private communications and personal data that are currently protected from surveillance and manipulation. Social media algorithms will become more sophisticated at identifying and connecting predators with vulnerable individuals, inadvertently facilitating predatory targeting through improved matching technologies. Augmented reality will create new opportunities for predators to overlay manipulative content onto victims' real-world experiences, blending digital manipulation with physical reality in unprecedented ways. Global connectivity will allow predators to target victims across international boundaries with reduced legal oversight, making investigation and prosecution more difficult while expanding potential victim pools. The democratization of advanced psychological knowledge through AI assistance and educational platforms may accelerate the inheritance of predatory techniques, making sophisticated manipulation skills more accessible. Cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies will provide predators with more sophisticated financial exploitation methods that are harder to trace and recover, integrating economic manipulation with psychological control. The proliferation of personal data through digital health records, smart city infrastructure, and ubiquitous computing will provide predators with unprecedented intelligence about potential victims' psychological and physical vulnerabilities. Society's increasing dependence on digital validation and online relationships creates expanding opportunities for predators who understand how to exploit technology-mediated psychological needs. The normalization of rapid, intimate communication through dating apps and social media creates cultural acceptance of relationship progression patterns that facilitate predatory manipulation. Mental health awareness and psychological education, while generally beneficial, also provide predators with more sophisticated understanding of victim psychology and manipulation techniques. The stigmatization of offline social interaction among younger generations creates populations that are more vulnerable to online predatory charm and less experienced with in-person deception recognition. Legal systems are struggling to keep pace with technological advances in predatory behavior, creating regulatory gaps that sophisticated predators can exploit with reduced risk of prosecution. The globalization of criminal networks allows predators to share techniques, resources, and even victims across international boundaries, creating more sophisticated and coordinated predatory operations. Artificial intelligence tools for generating persuasive content will enable predators to create manipulation materials that are more psychologically effective than human-generated content. The integration of predatory psychology with legitimate marketing, political influence, and social engineering creates cultural normalization of manipulation techniques that makes predatory behavior harder to recognize. Educational systems that focus on digital literacy without corresponding emotional intelligence training create populations that are technologically sophisticated but psychologically naive about manipulation. The commercialization of personal data creates economic incentives for platforms to collect and share information that predators can exploit for targeting and manipulation purposes. Therapeutic and counseling technologies, while beneficial for mental health, also provide predators with new methods for emotional manipulation disguised as psychological support. The increasing prevalence of social isolation and loneliness in modern society creates larger populations of vulnerable individuals who are susceptible to predatory charm targeting. Cultural shifts toward individualism and reduced community support systems eliminate traditional social protections that historically helped identify and prevent predatory behavior. The speed of technological change outpaces the development of protective legislation and social norms, creating windows of opportunity for predators to exploit new technologies before protective measures are established. Future prevention efforts will need to integrate technological solutions with psychological education, creating adaptive defense systems that can evolve with advancing predatory capabilities. The development of AI-powered protection systems may eventually provide individuals with real-time analysis of potentially manipulative communications, offering technological assistance for recognizing predatory behavior. Blockchain-based identity verification systems could provide more reliable methods for confirming the authenticity of online personas and reducing the effectiveness of fabricated digital identities. Biometric authentication and behavioral analysis may create more sophisticated methods for detecting deepfakes and other forms of digital deception used in predatory charm campaigns. The future requires proactive rather than reactive approaches to predatory charm prevention, anticipating technological developments and preparing protective measures before new predatory capabilities emerge. Understanding the trajectory of predatory charm evolution helps society develop comprehensive defense strategies that can adapt to emerging threats while preserving the benefits of technological advancement. The ultimate goal is creating a future where technological progress enhances human connection and safety rather than providing increasingly sophisticated tools for predatory exploitation. This requires ongoing collaboration between technologists, psychologists, law enforcement, and policymakers to ensure that protective measures keep pace with advancing predatory capabilities. The stakes of this evolution are enormous. The future safety of human relationships in an increasingly connected world depends on our ability to understand and prevent the continued refinement of predatory charm across generations.